Okay, so I think we're live. Um, I don't have Anders is not here today. He's taking some well-deserved PTO and some time off, so it'll just be me today. So we'll give everyone just a couple minutes to roll in and get settled in, and then we'll start our session. And I was just actually talking uh, with some folks here on the events team and about Explorer last week. So. Um, I was there last week for Explore, as usual, and so this week is the recovery week, just because you're running around and your body's sore from standing walking. I think I got enough steps in last week to last me for a while, um, and so glad to be back here though, and doing some presentations with everyone again. So I think we're at about the time here, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Again, it'll just be me today. Anders is not out. I'll talk a little about what we're going to, our next session though, after this one. I think we have one on the 14th as well. So, but what I'm going to talk about today is everything VMware Aria, right? Create a catalog for self-service consumption. So that's going to be, the topic for today. We have done a service broker catalog session maybe a month or so ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And what this is going to do is take pieces of that and dive into certain areas. So before we kind of learned about how to get content in there, but then now we're going to look at or what we can do in the contents there. Sorry, but now we're going to look at how we can actually get the content into the catalog and some best practices around that and everything else. So my name is Vince Ricchio. I'm a senior manager in the technical marketing group, uh, uh, focused on the cloud management portfolio, particularly automation. So thanks for joining today. Just real quick, a disclaimer, that we typically do. I don't think I'm really talking about anything too much here from that's going to be not already in the product, but if we do, then just know that new features could change and things like that. Okay, so what are we going to learn today? What are we going to go over today? So if you looked at or watched the catalog session we've done already this year, then you'll probably have some understanding of generally the idea of the catalog, even though I'm going to go over it a bit. But where I'm going to focus more is like version controlling and releasing various types of content into the catalog, and not just necessarily cloud templates, but also ABX actions, and then orchestrator workflows. And then also we might, if we have time, we'll look at code stream pipelines going in there as well. And then also I want to talk a little bit about, how you can also use ServiceNow and ITSM to present the catalog from Aria Automation as well to users. And that's been a pretty nice use case for our customers for quite some time now. So we'll talk about these different various types. And so what are they really doing for us? Like, let's say, for instance, we want to catalog with anything as a service, right? XAS. And that's where ABX could come in and Orchestrator, because those are essentially scripts that go out and do things, right? So ABX is really kind of more of your multi-cloud function as a service scripts, running Python, PowerShell, and so forth. And you can import, let's say Python libraries in there for like requests. So if you need to interact with an API via REST, then you can do that. Or orchestrator workflows, right? You want to kick off a workflow, that's an option right from the catalog, right, for both of those. Or just traditional deploying virtual machines and things like that. So you could just do traditional IaaS, XaaS, or even like even kind of developer type things like with the pipelines and so forth. So I'm having a little bit of an issue with my glasses here. And IaaS and things like that. And then also, what about, a lot of customers use like a ServiceNow portal for their users to request things, right? So how can we do that using our broker and then publish all of that up into a ServiceNow portal? So I'll go over that a little bit just as well. But first, okay, and then at the end of the session, creating templates and ABX actions and then releasing them in the catalog and then managing versions and content sharing as well. So those will be some of the things that we'll hopefully be able to do by the end of it. I'm not going to go through all of these. I just want to I just usually like to throw this up and talk about what piece I'm talking about. So as we've done these webinars this year, we've probably thrown up this slide a few times, and but I'll go through it just real quick, right? We have assembler, which we will be in a little bit because we're going to have to go look at ABX and cloud templates. Now these are services within Aria Automation itself. So Aria Automation, there's a number of services. Assembler allows us to, basically create the cloud, get all our resources together, interact with our cloud accounts, and all of that fun stuff. But in the context of what we're going to be doing today is we can create cloud templates based on YAML and then release those into the catalog. We can version control them, and there's some things we can do around sharing, items in the catalog and so forth. And then also our ABX and orchestrator, actions and so forth that we can ultimately create and then publish into those as well. We'll probably focus a little more on ABX, just because that's you know. Uh, we have more examples from a demo perspective, but we'll certainly talk to the orchestrator as well. And then guardrails, right? Won't really touch on that too much here, but the service broker, we're going to basically aggregating native content from multiple clouds and platforms and doing single catalog. And just a little note here, this is actually not in our automation anymore, so my apologies. My deck is probably maybe needs to get a little updated. So this is actually in our Tanzu Hub piece now, so I don't want any confusion on that. Okay, and then we'll go into pipelines a little bit, which is really our CI/CD pipelines, chunking up tasks and things like that. And then we could throw that into the portal. So give you that kind of developer pipeline experience. And then also orchestrator. So if you're familiar with orchestrator, right, there's essentially actions and you put those into workflows, and then you can drag and drop a bunch of stuff on the canvas for your workflow, and really do very sophisticated orchestration across different types of environments for different things. So we'll look at that a little bit as well. Real quick too here, the service broker, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, it's going to have our automation templates. We have CloudFormation templates, ABX actions, and so forth that we can throw in here. And then enable the policy-based service. So I'm going to spend a ton of time on that one. I'm just going to jump really more into the self-service multi-cloud approach that we take, and then talk a little bit about that. Essentially, our self-service multi-cloud approach is, admins will go in, VI admins or cloud admins will go in, and essentially set up, templates or ABX actions, and then essentially create projects, add users to those projects, and then what we can do is add our content into those uh, particular catalog items for that project. So projects are a way to kind of define who's going to have access to what objects inside the catalog. Now, when we do that, we'll obviously use all of our traditional Aria automation abstraction capabilities. So when we go in to create our cloud zones to identify, certain things, or we go into image mappings to identify our images and flavors and so forth, all that will be available for us, and then we can just kind of publish that into something, right? And go across different clouds, hyperscalers as well as VMware clouds as well. So just as we create cloud agnostic templates, or we do things from an ABS function as a service across different hyperscalers, even on-prem, then we can take advantage of those capabilities and put those into a way for users to request items. Now, the other thing that we can do here with the self-service multi-cloud is not just deploy, like, let's say, cloud agnostic VMs to different areas that we looked at in the previous session, but also, through X as a service or anything as a service, we can also, make REST calls or interact with, like, let's say, a vCenter through PowerShell, and there's a number of things that we can do, with the system as well, outside of just, hey, I want to go and request a VM. We can actually interact with APIs, and so it really gives you a nice way to say, we have this system out here, and we want to write a script, there's Python, Node.js, PowerShell, those sort of things, and interact with that API, and then essentially, also have that sort of service available to you, right? But again, for traditional infrastructure, deploy an application, a set of infrastructure for your applications, even create, let's say, Kubernetes clusters, things like that. All that's available, as well, just sort of, part of the templating, and things like that. Oops, let me go back here. Oh, and one other thing too, again, my slides are probably a little outdated, so I apologize on that. OVA actions here, OVA images, right? I think we're may not be in there anymore as well. So want to just kind of bring that up, since it looks like some of my slides might need to be updated. Okay, so declarative topologies with infrastructure as code. So I want to go through these three kind of main areas here, before I jump into the multi-cloud catalog, because this is where I'm going to focus a little bit of attention, in the demo, in terms of what are we actually going to send over there and how are we going to do it, how are we going to actually publish this stuff into the catalog. And what's nice about that too is, even if you publish it in the catalog and you want to send that up to, like, let's say, a ServiceNow, then those are still options, right? Even if you have custom forms with, dynamic drop downs, which may be calling an orchestrator workflow right from the template, those sort of things are available, and so forth. And we usually are pretty good about keeping up with the latest instances of ServiceNow. But for cloud templates, right, just real quick, right, this is our, way to define, what we want our deployment to look like, right? We can drag and drop, objects onto the canvas like a vSphere machine, or we could just use straight YAML code, or a mix of both, and define what we want our deployment to look like, right? So, and from that cloud template designer, we can test version control and then release to the catalog. So we'll look at what that process kind of looks like, and some things to kind of think about there, right? So we'll look at that, which is, going to be in the assembler service. So you notice here we're just deploying a cloud vSphere machine. Just to give you an example of what these cloud templates are doing. They can do things like, deploy machines. They can deploy K clusters. They can deploy a security, or, consume or deploy security groups depending upon the endpoint. They can also, deploy networks or consume storage, deploy disks, a lot of different things. We can even drag and drop Terraform templates on there, and all kinds of fun stuff. So, that's generally the idea, right, of the cloud template. And these can also be source controlled in Git as well. So if you and the ABX actions and orchestrator workflows can be source controlled in Git as well. So all of this can be source controlled in Git for more your DevOps and your one source of truth, sort of topology and methodologies. And then you know ultimately put that into the service broker catalog for us. And then orchestrator workflows, right? Again, these are more of your, I keep hitting my mouse button here. Yeah, more of your, longer chain kind of workflows, right? Where maybe you're putting different actions in, scripts, all kinds of stuff you can drag and drop on that canvas. A couple of years ago, we also added some additional capabilities to Orchestrator around it being more of a polyglot, scripting languages. Before it was mostly Java, right? Now there's Python, Node.js, and PowerShell available as well in there, which has been pretty nice. So as you create your orchestrator actions and stuff like that, you can even upload Python libraries, and so forth in there if you need to add different modules and stuff like that. And then ABX actions are built into the product under the extensibility section of Aria automation. And essentially what these are, there's really kind of serverless actions. So for instance, if you have a script that you want to run against an AWS environment, you can have that script in the ABX UI, And then you would basically run that through a Lambda service. So that way Lambda would just run that in a serverless way for you. And then on Azure, we use the Azure serverless. And then also we have an on-prem sort of proxy or sensibility proxy that can be used to run those serverlessly in a vSphere environment. So that's also been pretty nice. So these are really a nice way to run these scripts, and ABX actions and, let's say, orchestrated workflow actions as well, are not just limited to something that you can deploy into the service broker catalog for your multi-cloud catalog capabilities, but these can also be part of subscriptions that can be kicked off during certain events of a deployment during the life cycle. So you might say, okay, after a machine gets provisioned, I want to run this ABX action, or after a deployment gets completed, I want to run this orchestrator workflow, or different lifecycle stuff, and so forth. So that's another actual use case for those as well. That's pretty helpful. Okay, so another one is sort of this well, it's really this integration we've had with ServiceNow for some time. So if you're an Aria automation customer, whether you're on-prem or in the SaaS version, we have had a capability to display the catalog within Aria automation in a ServiceNow portal. So this is essentially done through a free plugin that you can get from the ServiceNow store. You essentially configure it to connect to your SaaS instance of Aria Automation, or you can configure it to connect to your on-prem. You can use a ServiceNow mid-server, I think they call it, and that allows you to connect to the on-prem instance. And then essentially you can tell it what items you want to be displayed in the ServiceNow portal, and then users can go in if they have entitlements to that catalog, then they can see those things are requested, and then on the back end, Aria Automation is actually doing the deployment. So you would also see the deployment happening in Aria Automation as well as in ServiceNow itself. So this has been a really nice way for our customers to use an existing ITSM ServiceNow catalog, but still use our backend engine to do the deployment and all of that. The other thing that you can do as well with this is we have integration in with, like, ServiceNow approvals, as well as their workflow builders, workflow editors, and other things in there. We automatically update the CMDB and all that kind of stuff. So it's really a nice plugin that does quite a bit for you. And so, for service catalog and configuration management, incident problem management. So let's say, just going along those lines real quick, if like, let's say a deployment fails, a ticket gets created in ServiceNow, that kind of stuff is part of the plugin, as well as approvals and so forth. And you can still actually use the policy engine within Aria Automation too, or use that as well if you want to do your approvals there. But a lot of customers that wind up, having ServiceNow, they want to maybe do the approvals from ServiceNow, so that is an option. So we'll look at that a little bit too in the demo. I'll walk you through that a little bit just so you can see how that works. If you use the older plugin, we've had this plugin out now for I don't know how many years. It's been quite some time. We changed it recently to kind of more use the native portal native catalog system within ServiceNow before we kind of created our own within ServiceNow. So if you're using the older one, this might look a little bit different to you, versus what maybe you've seen in the past. So it might be something interesting to stick around for. Okay, so let me kind of go over now to my actual demo environment. And of course, it's probably kicked me out, so let me log back in. Okay, and this has probably kicked me out too, yeah, so I'll probably have to log back into that here in a second. Okay, so let me actually do a couple things. I'm going to go over into this environment here because it's not as crowded. So when we go into our Aria automation service, let me just kind of expand this out a bit so it's easier to see. I'm going to go into Service Broker first. I don't think I have anything in here yet, which is good because we'll work a little bit from a clean slate. So when you go into the catalog system here, right, I don't have anything just yet. We have added some new stuff in here though, like your resource uses for your users and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is show you how do we get some stuff in here, and what that process kind of looks like. I probably won't like go create a template from scratch or anything. I think I have some available that we can go ahead and use. So we'll start there. I'm going to start out with the cloud templates, and we'll go to ABX. And then, time permitting, which I think there will be, we'll go back into ServiceNow. I'll just have to figure out how I log back in there, um, and go track the password down. Okay, so let's start with assembler. So remember the assembler service. This is where we can go in and create our cloud templates. So I'll go into the design section. We have our templates, and I've got one here created, everything Aria catalog. This was actually just a clone of this one here. I was a little, I was lazy, so I just did a clone and renamed it. And So essentially, this is just deploy a front end with a MySQL server in it. And you can see here's all of our code in here and all that to deploy this stuff. So essentially, right, the big thing here, let me get rid of that info, is once you've got this done, right, or you've got this built out and you've tested it, right, typically before you want to publish this to your catalog, you make it available to everybody. There's a couple things you can do, and this is what I like to do first. Is I like to go, okay, I'm going to deploy this environment, make sure everything works, put my password in here, and then test it, right? And then see if it actually will deploy into that environment. Now, in this particular one, I think this will fail because I kind of jumped over to like a little test lab. But when you test it, it should come back and tell you whether or not it will work. And what it does when it tells you it will work or not is it's looking for one placement. When you pick your target environment, does that environment exist? Is everything in the code on the right-hand side configured properly to where it will actually go there? And so did you use the right tags? Do you have the right kind of constraints available to where it can go to that target environment? And two, is that target environment available? And also, is it not just available, but is it also, there are the things that you're trying to connect to from a network standpoint of storage. Does it, will, do those connect and are they available to that environment you're trying to connect to? So for instance, if I have a network here on the canvas and I've tagged that to go to some environment, would that environment be able to support the cloud environment I'm deploying to? So that way, just make sure all our placement logic is correct. It also will go in and make sure that some of the syntax things that we may be doing within our YAML code are proper. And then it will give you a display of where things you need to go, right? So, or how we got there, right? When you hit the test button, it'll say, here's how it provisioned, here's why it made the decisions it made, and so forth. Because again, these could be cloud agnostic, right? So testing is really helpful, just to make sure that those things are done properly. And then also we can actually do the deployment from here. So from this cloud template, we can do a real deployment, actually deploy it all the way into the environment, and then interact with it at that point. And that's a good thing to do too, if you can, to just do an actual deployment before you put it into the catalog, because then okay, not only did the test work, not only did my deployment work, but now that those things are functional, I have more confidence that when someone hits the request button in the catalog, it's going to work. And why I usually do the test before I might do a deployment is because if I do a deployment, it goes through and then I spend a little time and then it fails for some reason. Well, maybe the test could have picked that up. So it might save you a little bit of time, as well on that. Okay, so let's say we've got this kind of where we want it to be, and I'm hitting my wheel mouse, sorry. What we can do is, I'm going to look at settings real quick, because what this does, it tells me what project this cloud template is a part of, and that's kind of important when we look at, when we look at like overall who's going to have access to actually request this from the catalog, right? So we want to make sure that when we do that request, that that the people have the right access, and that's where this project is available or useful. The other option we have here is an allow administrator to share with any project in this organization. What that means is that once we publish it to the catalog, various projects could take advantage of it and use it. And there's ways that we define that in the catalog itself. But it means that if I say share only with this project, only users from this project will be able to see it. If I say allow administrators share it with any project inside of the policies inside of the service broker section, I can say let me move that also into a different project so multiple project users can see this particular template. The next thing that you're going to do is version control it. We can look at our version history here, but let me go ahead and do a version real quick. I may already have a 1.0 here, so let me just create a 2 version, version number 2. And so what we can do is we can, once we version control it, like let's say I made some changes from version 1, I can go ahead and create a version 2. And then I can have either version 1 and version 2 release of the catalog, or I can unrelease version 1 if it was already released to the catalog, and then release version 2. So there's a little button here, release this version to the catalog. And then we could do that, right, by hitting create and then so forth. So what I'll do is let me look at the version that we have in here already. Oh, I haven't created it. Okay, so let me go back and do that. Maybe I deleted it. Oh, that's right. I think I redid this. Okay, so let's go ahead and version it. We'll do 1 and then hit release this version to the catalog, and I'll hit create. So once we've done that, we can see new version 1 is created. I'll go into version history, and then we could see that that version 1 now is available. And then what we're going to see is this option called unrelease. So if I unrelease it, then I can't publish it to the catalog, but I can release it and unrelease it right from here if I need to. So if I had multiple versions in here and I wanted to create, like, let's say version 2, I could do that and then unrelease version 1 if I don't want that available to the users anymore. So that's what that unreleased means. And then I can also look at the differences between all the different versions if I want to. I could look at the diffs, right? Against the current draft, if there are any diffs. I think it was the same one. So you can look at things like that too as well in here. But the idea is that we're just really releasing that to the catalog itself. Okay. So once we've done that, then we'll be able to go into Service Broker here in just a second, and then publish that to the catalog. Okay. So wanted to kind of walk you through that process a bit. Let me go into an ABX action now, and we'll take a look at how we can get that created and put into a cloud template. So what I'm going to do is I don't have any ABX actions right now, so I'm going to just hit new action, and we'll just say, everything Aria catalog. And then I'm going to search for a project. I'll just put it in my developer group. And I also have the options to share this with all projects in the organization as well. So I'm going to do is hit next and just let it create one. I'm just going to keep it to the simple hello greeting, and whatever I guess it'll be world here is my input. So essentially, I'll just keep it like that for now. And then I'll save this as well. So what I can do then is I'll create a version. So similar to what we do with the cloud template, we version it. So I'll just do 1. I can put a description here and all that kind of stuff if I want to. And then once I've done that, version 1 is created. And then what I can do is go into the versions that I've created, much like I could do with the cloud template. Now, these ABX actions can also be source controlled in Git as well. But if I want to version it here and go in and say, okay, I'm going to release this to the catalog. So the process here is I'm going to version control it, and then I'm going to hit the release button, and then it's going to go ahead and release this version to the catalog for me. Now it's not going to show up right away. I got to do a couple things in the catalog first. So just want to clarify that in case anyone's trying to do this right now. It's going to take there's a couple more steps to actually get it into the catalog. But now we've got everything kind of set up now to where we can go ahead and see all that in the catalog eventually. So for the sake of time, I'll probably just leave it to the ABX. The orchestrator stuff's similar. I'll show you that when we get into the catalog. You actually do it a little bit differently. You just kind of import them in, and so forth. So the other thing too is you can also import these as well. But we won't get into all that today. Okay, so I've got two things released to the catalog. I believe they're probably even two different projects. It's I'm going to have my work cut out for me a little bit and trying to remember which projects I was working with. So I'm not as organized as I probably should be, but hopefully we can get through it. So all right, so content sources. So when we go in right now, you can see my service broker catalog is empty. So let me go into content policies and these content sources. So one thing I need to do is hit new content source. And the two that I'm going to be interested in right now are going to be templates and ABX extensibility actions. So let's go into template, and then I'm just going to do, templates. How about that? And then I think on this one, it's the MOAD group, hopefully, crossing fingers, and then we'll hit validate. Okay, nothing found there, so it might not have been the MOAD group. Maybe it was the developer group. Yeah, it was the developer group. Okay, so looks like I've got a couple of things from the developer group in there, because when I hit validate, it'll say, okay, there's 2 items found. If I go into this other one, I say there's no items found, then that means that it didn't find anything in that group. Okay, so we should be able to see my Explorer catalog in there. Um, and we can also go just double check that if we need to. So let me actually do that real quick just to make sure that I am correct on this. Yeah, it's developer group. Okay, for some reason I was thinking it was MOAD, so that was my bad there. Okay, so it is MOAD, so that's good. So I hit create and import. And then essentially now we have the templates here. And then I'll go to content sources and I'll hit new. And then I will go into extensibility actions and let's just do ABX here. And then I will do, I think this was developer group, so I'll do validate. And so we see our one item there. Okay, so now I've got these templates. Let me see if those came in. Oh, I did MOAD group again, sorry. I was wondering what happened there. I thought I was messing around too much, going too fast. Okay, there we go. Save and import on there. Now we should see some template items. I was like, what was I doing? Okay, so now we've got that 1 out of 1, and then we got a couple, we probably had a couple of other, or maybe one other deal in there. So this is the content, right, that we have available to us. So yeah, that's right. This one was published as well. So I've got these 2 templates. This was the one we looked at originally. There are some things we can do. We can configure them, customize the form, which is a custom form, and so forth. We won't get into all that here today. So the other thing is when I do this, right, and I go into my catalog, there's nothing there just yet. So the next thing I need to do is I need to actually go into policies. When I go into policies, what I want to do is I want to go into this developer group policy. So this is my project developer group, right, that I had all that stuff under. So what I want to do is go into developer group, and I'm going to go ahead and hit add item. So we'll see our ABX and our templates. I'm just going to check all of that. This should be the everything Aria catalog, and then the 2 templates that we looked at earlier. I'll hit save on there. Now we can see that they're available. And once we've done that, then we could see, they should show up in under consume here. Just a second. Sometimes the ABX one might take a minute. Let's just kind of go back. It just takes sometimes a second for them to pop in. Yeah, so there it goes. So now we can see our 2 cloud templates and then our ABX action, right? So this would just simply run that script, whatever that script's doing. If it's going out and interacting with an API somewhere, creating something, going back into VRA or Aria automation and doing something, all that could be available, right? And then of course our templates. So at this point now I've got a few things in here that I could take advantage of and start to request. And so forth. So want to just kind of bring this up as well for you here. And if I hit request, then it just brings me into the template, and I can go ahead and do all the stuff that I was able to do. In fact, let me do it on this one right here, because that's the one that we had before. So we can see generally, here's the target environment, right, that I had before, and all that kind of stuff. So it looks like that test and the deployment that I would have done from the template itself. And so forth. If I have integrations with like some of our costing tools like Aria Operations, then I would also see costs and stuff there as well. But this is how we can generally get these in here and so forth. Now, if I wanted to, like, let's say, bring in a pipeline, we could also do that. I think I might have a pipeline in this environment. I do. So pipelines are essentially the ability to have these stages, and then what you could do is in these stages you can chunk it up into different tasks. Like I could run a cloud template, then I could create a script here, right, with some sort of CI script, things like that. And then essentially what I could do is I could release this to the catalog. Okay. Yeah, everything would change. Okay. I can basically release this to the catalog, right? So if I go, action and release, it's kind of the similar thing. So it'll say enabled and released. And then what I'll need to do is go back into the service broker catalog and then import a content source that would be pipelines, right? So if I go over here to content sources, I hit new, and then I'll go to pipelines, and I could just say, this is pipelines. And then the project source, I'm going to say, hopefully it's developer group there too. Yes, it is. Okay, so there's my one item. Good thing I was consistent with the project at least, even though I didn't realize I'd done that. Okay, so my pipelines are there. So I see my 1 out of 1 pipeline, and then all I have to do now is go back into here and just add that item, so I can see that the pipeline is there. Just hit save, and then save it, and then my pipeline should then show up here in just a second. So yes, it just takes a second for it to pop in. Um, Maybe it'll take a second or two. Yeah, sometimes the pipelines take a second to pop in. Yeah, there we go. So where is it? Yeah, here we go. So now we see our pipeline, our VMware Aria automation pipeline available as well. So we've looked at kind of we looked at 3 different things to bring in here. What was the cloud template, the extensibility action, or the ABX script, as well as a pipeline um, as well here. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is let me just check and see if there's any comments or anything like that. I do need to run over here and get that password for the ITSM stuff. So let me see if I've got that. Here I do. Okay, I've got that. All right, now I can continue on. Let me just log back in here. Let's copy and paste that. Maybe. Okay, looks like it worked. All right, so let me jump back over here and I'll share this screen. There we go. Okay. Yeah, looks like I'm sharing the right one. Okay, good. So real quick, I want to just go over the ServiceNow piece as well, because this is also another use case that we see quite a bit from customers that want to consume the catalog items. So all those catalog items that I just showed you could be ported up into a ServiceNow portal like this for users to go in and request those items. It's pretty straightforward to do this. Once you put the the plugin into ServiceNow, which is in the ServiceNow store, then essentially you just connect it back, and then within the walkthrough of configuring the plugin within ServiceNow, you're going to see your projects and you're going to see your catalog items and so forth. And so then you can, determine which projects and which items you want to actually show up in the catalog, and then assign those to users and user groups within the ServiceNow system. So you could go in and say, I want this, group over here within ServiceNow to be able to access this catalog. Then go in, see those items, and then request those items. And then again, we could still go through those approval processes and all that kind of stuff. And then you can watch it actually getting deployed in the RA automation as well. It'll show up as a traditional deployment, so it could be interacted with there from an admin perspective if needed as well. But the users can also do a lot of stuff with the deployments that they've already created. So if you have a deployment created, then they can actually interact with it within ServiceNow. They'll see it under their open deployments. I don't have any here right now, but if they have some, they'll be able to go in and see those deployments and then interact with them, take day 2 actions on it, look at all the objects in there, and delete the deployment if they have permissions to do that. Okay. So what they could do is they could go in and, like, let's say, hit request something. Now this page is customizable, right? In ServiceNow, there's kind of like an editor you can go into, and our documentation will show you how to go into the editor and drag and drop the right widgets over, like for deployments and things like that. So if they go in and hit request something, then this is the catalog that we have in here. Now this is not the catalog from the organization I was just in. This is our larger demo organization. We probably use this organization multiple times in previous webinars that you may have seen, but then we could see all of our automation items that came over, right? So we can look at, here's our new architecture one. And there's these items that are in our automation catalog, right? And so essentially users can then go in and deploy these, right? So if I click on one of them, then I'm presented with the form essentially to get this actually created, right? So this would look very similar, if not identical, to what you're going to see in Aria Automation itself if you were to go and request it there. So we bring over all the forms, including dynamic drop downs and all kinds of stuff. And we could just go through and hit deployment name, hit cluster name, right? Whatever we need to do, put our inputs in there, and then hit order now. Now, once we hit order now and everything's filled in and we hit that order now button, then essentially what happens is, I think by default we even do this, but you can always configure it, as it goes through the ServiceNow approval process. So it's going to go and say waiting for an approval from the approver. Actually, what you would have to do to make that happen is you actually set up an ITSM approver. So there's different accounts and different roles that you can create through the plugin. And if the plugin has an approver, then by default it will try to go to that approver to get the approval. So that user would actually see it in the upper right hand corner. They'll see requests, and they'll see approvals in there that they could approve or deny. And so that's sort of that process of doing this. Now, once this gets deployed, then they can go in and again interact with it and so forth. So again, this plugin is for to present that catalog I just showed into a ServiceNow portal for users that would like to do it that way. Okay, so I'm running up against time just a little bit here, so I wanted to uh, just kind of go back to my PowerPoint if I can. Where did my PowerPoint go? There it is. Okay, I think I moved it to the wrong. Okay, so let me jump over here. There we go. Okay, so hopefully a couple things. Release content to the catalog. Hopefully we know how to do that now, right? You create your content, you create your cloud template, you create your ABX action, you create your pipeline. That pipeline I created, actually I just imported that as YAML from a previous environment that I had, so it's kind of nice to be able to do that. You can release all that content in there. Now there's other content sources as well I didn't get into. We touched on those in a previous session, like CloudFormation templates, and so forth, and orchestrator workflows obviously as well. And then consume those items, right, from the user perspective. So the user goes in, they see those items within the service broker catalog that they've been entitled to based on those projects that we talked about, and then identify some self-service use cases around using it with ITSM, right, and ServiceNow, um, and being able to kind of expand that out beyond just our portal itself. Okay, so great. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to probably not go as long today, since we didn't have the longer intro in the beginning sometimes. So hopefully this was just enough to kind of get you started in understanding how to produce some content and get it released to that catalog. Our next session is September 14th. And that session, we're going to go over managing applications and services using Aria Automation Config. So Aria Automation Config, just to let you know, was a former Salt Stack config. And that's basically the commercial or UI product on top of OpenSalt. And this allows us to do a number of things with an OpenSalt environment such as manage all of the objects, run jobs, run state files, schedule jobs against environments, build state files, and a lot more. Handle pillar data, all kinds of stuff that's very helpful for that type of environment, including being able to target machines and target groups. And that'll be part of what we're going to talk about here in this next session, as well as how do you really how do you create these state files that can deploy applications and services, or manage applications and services as well, and then target the right groups for them. So there's a number of different ways we can target machines to apply these state files that will do things on the machine, right? So Aria config, the former Salt Stack config, is really kind of that configuration management piece for operating system management, right? So these state files could do things like install packages on Linux. They can install services. They can install Windows applications. They can manage Windows services, Windows registries. There's a number of things we can do within the operating system to deploy apps, manage services, stop and start services, and so forth. So how do we do that across a fleet of systems? We'll probably look at how we do it, individually, just run it on target groups, and then how do we do it against a larger target group as well, that may have or multiple target groups if needed, right? There's concepts within here like high state, where we can target systems based on certain criteria, where the target group will have criteria, but then the high state will focus it based on other parameters that are at another layer of abstraction. And so by incorporating these state files, we can do a lot more automation. And in fact, in the Aria automation templates, there's the salt stack resource type that you can drag and drop on the canvas and then apply state files to the machine as it gets deployed there as well. So we'll look at all these options and how we sort of do this in this particular session. Now, we have had other sessions that have focused on Aria automation config and salt. This one will be a little more focused on really how do you deploy the apps and deploy the services at request time, and that'll be a big part of what we're going to look at, and we'll look at it from a Linux and a Windows side. A lot of people, I think traditionally, right, when we think of config management, a lot of times we think Linux, but Salt actually has a really great Windows, some really great Windows capabilities as well. They have a kind of a Win repo where you can import a bunch of files that can go out and install software on Windows machines, and so forth, and also a lot of other nice Windows modules for IIS and um, uh, you know uh, logins and things like that. So really, really nice. So we'll take a look at all of that in the next session as well. Okay, well, thank you. That was pretty much it for me today. Really, really appreciate everyone's time. Hopefully it was helpful. And I will just stop sharing here and get my laptop set up. Okay, well, great. Well, so really appreciate everyone's time. The window was really small there. I don't know if you saw me the whole. I don't know if you could actually see me during the whole time I was presenting, but my dog was back there and he's moving around a little bit. And I was wondering, it was so small I couldn't tell what it was. But yeah, I've got a fairly large golden doodle walking around behind me. If you were wondering what that was back there, and the blurriness of the background. Well, anyway, thanks everyone for joining, and really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next one.